greetings from the Center for National Security Studies. I am Balasubramanian, Senior Research Officer and Head of the India Strategic Studies Program at CNSS. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar series, Perspectives on National Security. Our focus today is on emerging dynamics in West Asia and implications for India. To provide some context, West Asia is bordered by Europe, Central Asia, South Asia, Africa, and the Arabian Sea, and is a region marked by high tension and significant militarization. According to the SIPRI report, it is one of the most heavily armed regions globally, with substantial arms imports primarily from the US. The ongoing Hamas-Israel war, along with other conflicts like the Syrian civil war, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the Yemeni civil war, further intensifies the instability in the region. For India, West Asia holds critical importance for energy security, economic interest, the Indian diaspora, counter-radicalization efforts, cultural ties, and as a gateway to Central Asia. Our India's Look West policy, introduced in 2014, aims to enhance engagement with the region while carefully navigating its complex politics. Our distinguished guest today, Dr. Alvite, Ningthoujam, will offer valuable insights into how India can effectively address these challenges and protect its interests in this volatile region. Dr. Alvite is an assistant professor at Symbiosis School of International Studies, Pune. He has previously served as a consultant at the National Security Council Secretariat, Prime Minister's Office, focusing on West Asia, North Africa issues, and was also a senior research associate at the Vivekananda International Foundation. Dr. Alvite was also one of the 5 young researchers from India selected for the Next Generation Initiative by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, London, and he was a fellow at the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies, Bar Ilan University, Israel. We are honored to have you with us, sir. Thank you for joining us today. Before I move on, I have a couple of requests from the audience. One, please post your questions in the chat box. Oral questions are discouraged. And please keep your mic muted throughout the proceedings to avoid disruption. However, you may keep your video on. With this, I now request Major General J.V. Prasad, Director CNSS, to deliver the opening address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Bala. Good afternoon, Dr. Alvite, and ladies and gentlemen. The Center for National Security Studies, located in Bengaluru, was established as a result of an MOU between RTRAC, Shimla, and MS Ramaiah University in Bengaluru, with the purpose of establishing a leading center of excellence in research and analysis in national security matters. And the center has 4 verticals functionally. One is the India Strategic Studies Program, which is led by Bala. Then we have the non-traditional security vertical. Third, we have the emerging technologies and geopolitics program. And lastly, we also have a dual-use technology program, considering that the university has a rich experience of delivering to the DRDO and affiliates through its Techno Center. So we started a series of talks from the national security perspectives. So in this series of talks, today's talk is on West Asia. I thank Dr. Alvite for accepting this invitation and delivering this talk today afternoon. We all know, ladies and gentlemen, that West Asia and India always had historical and civilizational links going back to even medieval times also. But post-Cold War, there has been a strong support for the Arab and Palestinian movement from the government of India. And there was a unquestioned kind of a support for their particular cause, even against the, against this thing of Israel. But post-Cold War, there has been a slight shift in this relationship with West Asia. The challenge presented before the government of the day, or the leadership of the day, was to balance the relationship between accepting Israel and also rest of the Arab world. So this has gone into a number of cycles depending upon who is in the government and who is the leadership, political leadership in our country. But post-Cold War also saw a dramatic shift in the relationships with West Asia, essentially because of the enhancement of trade between West Asia and India. So economic primacy had come into the relationship, which helped the relationship to flourish. And thereafter, in the last 1 decade, we have seen the Prime Minister himself bringing his personal influence on the leadership of West Asia in strengthening these relationship between the West Asia at large and also bilaterally with a number of countries in the region. But given the existing turbulent geopolitical situation in West Asia, it will be very interesting to see what prognosis Dr. Alvite has for us and see how this relationship is going to manifest in the future. So I eagerly look forward for the talk by Dr. Alvite. May I request Dr. Alvite to please deliver his talk.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bala. Uh, at the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to the Center for National Security Studies for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to speak at this webinar on a very important subject, dealing with the situations in West Asia and what does it mean for a country like India, which is increasingly uh, raising its profile and status in the region as compared to 10, 15 years earlier. Uh, I also would like to personally thank Pratap sir for taking this forward. I personally reached out to him a couple of months back when I saw the launch of CNSS on LinkedIn. And I, for one, was very particularly excited about this initiative of having a kind of a research and analysis organization in this part of the country, and moreover to take the discourse away from Delhi also, where all the issues pertaining to security studies, strategic studies, and area studies are heavily concentrated upon in. So it's a I thank the team at CNSS and also wishing them a very good luck for all the endeavors in the near future. This to me is very interesting as an initiative, and particularly in a city like Bangalore, which is growing in its profile, and many of the companies and many of the embassies and consulates are really looking forward to increase their footprints and presence in this city. So thank you, sir, for taking this forward finally, and to my friend Bala for all the coordination that we have been doing for the last almost 2.5 weeks. And finally, we have seen the light of the day today. The topic for today's interactive session to me is of immense importance, uh, not only for our country, but also for the international community. This particularly is because of the geostrategic importance of the West Asian region being at the crossroads of three very important continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa. Uh, Interestingly, this region never runs out of news, but lately there are interesting as well as very concerning developments, which the director, sir, has rightly pointed out during his introductory remarks. And he has also made my work a little more easier by flagging some of the very important markers of uh, the emerging dynamics between India and West Asian countries, particularly in the economic and energy sector. Apart from that, we also have many dimensions being added and attached to this bilateral relationship in the last almost 12 to 13 years. Uh, the region already had witnessed, that is, when I refer to region, it is West Asia I'm referring to. The region already had witnessed several turmoils, particularly from the, I'm not going back to the medieval period, but say from the late 40s onwards, we have had several wars being fought between Israel and some of the Arab adversaries. 1948 war, then we have the 1956 Swiss crisis, we have 1967 Arab-Israeli conflict, 1973 Yom Kippur War or the October War. We had a long stint of conflict between Iran and Iraq from 1980 to 1988, and then we have the first Gulf War, beginning from August of 1990 and ended in September 1991. Invasion of US in Iraq in March 2003, which was being considered and still considered as the second Gulf War. So the region had seen a number of crises, conflict, and that's also precisely the reason why Students like me who study West Asia always say that there's never a dull moment in West Asia, and also it's borrowing my professor's line that there's never a dull moment in the moment West Asia runs out of conflict. People like me, Divya, working on West Asia, will also run out of jobs. So that's the kind of a joke that he used to make while we were, doing our research under him. But despite this turmoil, there was sort of a calmness that had entered into the region from the mid and the latter part of the 90s. But then the momentum was broken by the announcement of a caliphate by an extremist group called ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, which announced the so-called caliphate in June 2014 from Mosul, Iraq, and that again turned the tides in the region, which is now more or less contained, at least financially, territorially. But having said that, the ideological underpinnings still remain, and we can see the remnants of this organization, thriving in different parts of the world. The reason why I'm giving this a little bit of a backdrop, particularly in terms of conflict, is because this has been one of the markers of the region. When we talk about West Asia, not many talk about stability and peace. Many talk about or relate the region mostly with conflict and internal skirmishes or the sectarian dynamics that have begun to be in full display, particularly after the 1979 revolution in Iran. That also had led to the estrenchment of relationship between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which ultimately led to the snapping of diplomatic ties in 2016 when Saudi Arabia executed a Shiite cleric, Nimr al-Nimr, on the charge of spreading terrorism inside the kingdom. So you can see quite a few varieties of problems in the region. But having said that, the region is very, very important. I have given a little bit in the beginning of my remarks that it is at the crossroad of three very important continents, and that also is one of the reasons why many countries are looking towards enhancing their footprints in the region. The extra-regional players, particularly China, at the moment right now, notwithstanding the interest being exhibited by countries like, say, Russia, France, Britain in the recent times, while of course Britain and France are two major players in the region, and also the US. But in the recent times, countries like China are making a speedy inroad into the region, which I will touch little later when I talk about some of the challenges. One of the most important markers or the salience of this region is the energy resources. I'm sure I don't have to go into the details of the kind of endowments, the natural endowments the region has. The region contains approximately about 65% of the world's proven oil reserves and about 45% of natural gas reserves. And we are also one of the largest buyers of both these very strategic commodities. This makes the region very attractive for numerous countries, including India. And then over the last few years, there are some efforts, very serious efforts being made by some of the Gulf countries or the major exporters of countries to diversify their revenue sources. For the longest time, a bulk of the revenue comes from the energy and oil exports. And we already have the rentier sort of an economy, which is being enjoyed by almost all the Gulf countries. But with the fast depletion of this fossil fuel or the hydrocarbon, and also to mitigate the challenges emanating out of climate change and global warming, these countries are now reversing back to reliance on renewable energy. And that also opens up a lot more scope for cooperation with countries like India, China, Singapore, or many other countries in different parts of the world. The second geostrategic importance of this region is the maritime choke points. We are already aware of the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the single most important oil passage choke point between the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Roughly 20% of the global oil trade and 35% of the world's LNG pass through this. So this speaks a volume about the centrality of this passage. And in the event there are conflicts or military flare-ups, it can cause a major havoc in the international maritime trade, not only for the supply of oil and energy, but also for various other non-oil commodities that pass through this the choke point. Then we also have other passages like the Suez Canal. We already are aware of the importance of Suez Canal. And in my introductory remark, I also touch upon the Suez crisis of 1956 that led an attempt made by Nasser to nationalize the Suez did not go down well with many countries of the many powers of the time. And then we have few other Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Uh, we are we all have read the developments in the Red Sea in the recent years, particularly in the last few months, how those activities being carried out by the Houthi militias from Yemen caused a major stir in the international market, particularly for the seafarers. Luckily, in India, we don't have much of seafarers. We rely more on the containers from outside. So we did not see much of the pinch, while there are discussions about in the impact if it continues for a longer period of time. And this takes me back to the importance of the region from the economic and commercial point of view. We have 3, 4 major financial hubs, particularly Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Doha, and cities like Riyadh and Medina are really inching in that direction, and they are also within the framework of the Saudi Vision 2030. They are also calling for more investments. They no longer enjoy the revenue that they are generating from their oil resources, but they are also calling for more investments coming into the country. That's also the reason why the Saudi government in particular looks forward to enhancing the partnerships with countries like India, which I will come when I talk about the trajectory of India's relations with the West Asian countries. And very importantly, which also fits well into today's discussion, is the geopolitical dynamics. The region has seen several rivalries, particularly we already have the traditional rivalry between the Arabs and the Israelis, but that has been ebbing, that has been slowing down in the last few years because everybody has become kind of a fatigue about the unresolved Palestinian issue, and there are more of a real politic in the conduct of their relationships. Less to do with the ideological differences, but more to do with the convergence of strategic interests. And then you have the sectarian rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which got really sharpened after the 79 revolution. But the relationship was non-existent for almost 6, 7 years after the execution of a Shiite cleric in January 2016. But thanks to the Chinese mediation in March 2023, that Iran and Saudi Arabia had decided to reconcile and led to a rapprochement and restoration of the diplomatic relationship. But one interesting dynamics which we have seen in the region is the wave of normalization between Israel and the Arab countries. For the longest time, this is one of the major policy objectives and goals for a country like Israel that has been surrounded by many adversaries. So this takes me back to the policy being adopted by the first Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu is very popular, so his name is very much on my lips. I'm talking about David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel that adopted the policy called peripheral diplomacy, that is trying to court the support of the non-Arab countries which are lying in the periphery of Israel. So the wave of normalization that we are seeing in the region since particularly 2020 in the form of Abraham Accords can also be seen as an attempt made by Israel to practice kind of a new peripheral diplomacy. But the only difference this time is they are quoting more of the Arab countries. There is also a kind of a convergence of interest, particularly economic interest, strategic interest, technological interest, and very importantly, around that period of time, Iran became a major factor for some of the convergence between Israel and the moderate Sunni countries, particularly with Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE. Some of the shared perceptions vis-a-vis the theocratic regime of Iran has led to further convergence of interest between the two. And moreover, under the aegis of the American administration during Donald Trump's presidency, they were able to see the light of the day, and that was a big breakthrough for Israel. For the longest time, Israel was being seen within quote as a pariah state and not getting more of an acceptance. But that particular wave of normalization has become a major breakthrough for a country like for a country like Israel. They were almost on the brink of witnessing a similar breakthrough with Saudi Arabia, but the outbreak of the 7 October conflict between Israel and Hamas, when Hamas carried out the attacks against Israel on the wee hour of the 7th morning, exactly 50 years after the Yom Kippur War, that again changed the dynamics of the entire region. This is something very important right now. From being a conflict between IDF and the Hamas, the conflict is now spilling over different parts of the region, particularly in the Shiite dominated areas where you have a massive support being given by regimes in Tehran. But the security challenges, of course, remain very prominently. But having said that, the war in Syria is winding down. Bashar al-Assad has taken control over almost all the parts of the country, and he has been managing the civil war very, to his stride. Yemen, the crisis is there, but not as severe as it used to be. But very, very interestingly, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is back in the forefront again. This is one of the objectives of Hamas, because for the longest time, while we are seeing many good developments in the region getting towards normalcy, many have consciously or unconsciously ignored something which was fomenting behind. That is the pent-up frustrations of the Palestinians, because the Palestinian cause was not moving anywhere, except for the attempts being met by Donald Trump, though it was a failure, the deal of the century or the Trump's peace plan. No major attempts have been made by any major power or by the multilateral forum like the UN to resolve the crisis. And also, this is also being added with the high corruptions within the Israeli system and the Palestinian system that did not lead to any breakthrough. So now the conflict that broke out in 7 October has changed the dynamics of the region, particularly the security dynamics. The fault lines are visible right now, and the rivalry between Israel and Iran is very much again in the forefront. That is going to be a major concern for India. So now this takes me back to the trajectory of the relationships between India and the West Asian countries. Now, the increase in India's bilateral partnerships and cooperation with the wider West Asian region has come at this juncture when the region is also looking towards towards Asian powers. As much as we have, Bala also has mentioned about India's look west policy to court in the support and political partnerships of the Arab countries or the West Asian countries. The Arab countries in particular, the Gulf countries, also have a similar outlook of looking east. Uh, so they are increasingly, looking for more investments, economic partnerships, and security partnerships with the rising powers or the rising economic players in the Asian region. That includes India, and China has always been there since last few years. You have countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and in the east you have Japan and South Korea. So it is within that framework of enhancing their bilateral cooperation. Uh, West Asian countries are also looking towards warming up to India. And if you look at the trajectory of our relationships in the last, say, particularly since 2014, our prime minister has gone to almost all the countries in the region except for Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Kuwait. And I'm sure in the upcoming years, there would be more visits to the region, including to the ones that have been left out in the previous 2 terms of this current government. Uh, the, in my opinion, the strengthening of the political partnerships between New Delhi and the capitals in the West Asian region uh, was very, very important. This has kind of filled the void or the political vacuum that was in existence for the longest time. The reason why I'm saying this is because for a prolonged period of our interactions with the West Asian countries, the nature of our ties was mostly viewed from the prism of what amount of oil are we buying from Iraq or Iran or Saudi Arabia or many other exporters. The annual remittances that come to the country from the large expatriate community, which is about 8 million at the moment, and also the energy supplies, and also the workforce that are in the region. But over the period of years, the profile of the Indians going to West Asian countries are fast changing. It's no longer only the laborers or the unskilled or the semi-skilled. There are high-skilled workers going to various countries in the West Asian region, particularly to the Gulf countries, and to be a part of their economic program, development program. It's no longer a buyer-seller relationship or a patron-client relationship. The countries in West Asia are also looking for two-way investments. That is also the reason why you see the Saudi Arabian king and his son, the crown prince, the UAE leadership, the Bahraini leadership, and many other leadership from the region are talking about enhancing trade ties and commercial cooperation with India. And if you see, two of the top five trading partners for India are from Gulf region, Saudi Arabia and UAE. UAE is the third largest trading partner, and Saudi Arabia is the fourth largest trading partner. With UAE, we have gone ahead by signing the CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, in February 2022. And also, in order to ease, business and transactions, we also have signed an agreement for the rupee dirham payment mechanism. And the similar, activities are also being sought with Saudi Arabia and various other countries. This is the same with Israel. If you look at the ties with Israel, for more than 2 decades, the relationship was mostly dominated by defense trade. So, earlier, when somebody hears about India-Israel bilateral cooperation, all we could think of is the arms trade or the military security cooperation. But if you look at the moment, the relationship has been expanded to renewable energy. There is also an economic partnerships going on right now. You can see the volume of trade going exponentially in the last few years. Uh, Apart from the defense trade, technological partnership is very much thriving. And if you see the contributions being made by Israel in India's agricultural sector, it is phenomenal. They have centers of excellence spread over across various parts of the country. Then there's also a robust partnerships going on with regard to health and agricultural sector and water sector. Divya already has done some work in, I think, the health sector also with regard to India and Israel, the pharmaceutical cooperation, along with different laboratories and the industries from Israel and also with India. A similar pattern can be seen with other countries. So this is a way, and countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE are looking forward to increasing the bilateral partnerships with India. And the targeted trade figure which both these countries have is 100 billion in the next 3 to 4 years. If you look at the UAE-India partnership, we already have touched about $75 billion. With UAE, it's little lesser than that, but given the kind of agreements being signed, there are many more activities which are likely to take place in the times to come. And very importantly, in the recent times, we can see a massive growth in the military security cooperation. This was not the case earlier. If we talk about the India Gulf military security cooperation, it was mostly with Oman, the strongest partner, Israel, and to an extent with Jordan. But in the recent years, the military security partnership with the Gulf Cooperation Council countries are on the rise. I have done a piece with the National University of Singapore in October last year, where I have detailed some of the agreements being signed and some of the activities which are being carried forward, which are being carried out by India and the Gulf partners. And this is a very promising field, particularly for both sides, because as much as we are looking at industrial cooperation in the military technology sector, similar objectives are also there in many of these countries, particularly UAE and Saudi Arabia. They have some arms industries that are looking for partnerships with countries like India and many other external partners. And it works well for India, which is also trying to reverse the order or the status of being the world's largest importer of arms. We are now looking for export markets for some of our indigenously manufactured defense items. So some of these countries, particularly UAE and Saudi Arabia and Israel for that matter, have already started importing some of the items manufactured by India. But this is one area which remains very potential. And apart from many other activity cooperation in the cybersecurity domain as well. Let me come to the challenges part of it. Uh, as much as we, and then we can have little more interactions. I can already see some questions being propped up on my screen. But there are certain challenges which we also need to keep in mind, particularly when we look at India's director sir also pointed out about what can we do in the region. We are already familiar with the turmoils in the region right from the 1991 when we had difficulties, but then we achieved in evacuating all our workers from the Gulf countries during the first Gulf War in Iraq, Kuwait. We had seen that during the Libyan crisis, the Yemeni crisis. In terms of the evacuation, we failed. I think we are fairly well prepared to meet that kind of a very eventuality. But given the rising profile of the country in terms of the economic stakes, security stakes, any flare up in West Asian region will not be good for India. Because it's not only oil energy trade, but then we also have many investments going on in the region. We would not want to be, we don't want to see any disturbances to our investments over there, which will directly and indirectly fit into our economic growth story. And at the same time, we also have certain competitors in the region, that is China. As much as we are increasing our profile, economic profile in some of these countries, the Chinese are a little ahead of us. We have to accept that, particularly since the announcement of Belt and Road Initiative, and given the kind of a strategic importance of this region, that the Chinese had already moved in little ahead of us, particularly in the sectors related to infrastructure, economic, and financial domain. But they are now increasingly looking forward towards increasing military security cooperation. And very importantly, they would want to spread their political influence in the wider region. We have seen this when they took part in bringing together two arch rivals, Iran and Saudi Arabia. They, of course, they work with Oman and Iraq also, but they have taken the credit of being the broker of that reconciliation in March last year. And at the same time, when the conflict started in October 7 last year, some of the delegations from the region, they do not go to Britain, they do not go to US, they went to China. So that also in a way speaks a volume about the kind of expectations that the Arabs have from the Chinese government. In the long run, for now, this can be a competition for India, because we are also similarly vying for those areas where we would want to increase our footprints upon, particularly in the infrastructural projects domain, in the economic activities, even the security. But in the long run, if we see more and more advanced penetration of the Chinese footprints in the region, it could be a kind of a concern for India as well. But this is not to say that it is an immediate threat right now, but we should be mindful of there's a little bit of a difference in the way how the Chinese are handling the region and how we are handling the region. That takes me back towards the last few points of my presentation, that we are dealing with the region very bilaterally. Our bilateral interactions are very strong, thanks to the personal diplomacy, which was also flagged by the director, sir, that the personal diplomacy and the personal bonhomie that the Prime Minister has built up over the last 10 and a half years has paid some dividends, positive dividends in bringing together the leaderships. But we also need to look at the region holistically. We need to, but then I would not say that the region has lots of challenges because there are strong intents coming from the leaderships in West Asia to warm up to the Indian side. We have seen that right after Jaishankar took over as the new EAM for this new term, Qatar was the first country that he visited to in the region, which also in a way speaks a volume about what kind of importance we are according to. Sorry, Abu Dhabi was the city that he visited. That also reflects the importance of UAE in our partnership. There's a very strong convergence. But the only challenge that the region will likely to see is the increasing Iranian-Israeli rivalry. This is one dimension of the Israel-Hamas conflict that is going to remain, a concern not only for the region but also for the international community. As of now, we haven't seen major flare-ups apart from the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, and in the days after that, there were lots of discussions about the retaliation to be expected from Iran. It has also hurt the prestige and ego of Iran. They consider themselves as the regional superpower or the regional military power. So having seen that kind of an attack coming from Israel in the last few months, we already had in April when Israel retaliated against the Isfahan near the nuclear site, and then in the heart of Tehran just last month, it kind of punctured the ego and prestige of Iran also. So we need to see how they would retaliate, either in the form of a direct attack or by using the proxies which are already operating in the region. So this leaves West Asia in a kind of flux, and then we will need to see. But at least for the next 3, 4 years or 5 years, the region will continue to see some sort of uncertainty. I stop here, and we can have some Q&A in this regard. Thank you, Bala.
Thank you, Dr. Alvite, for a very cogent and riveting talk on this subject. So I'll go on to the questions which are posted in the chat box. The first question is, what changes in the Gaza war or Arab-Israel relations do you foresee if Donald Trump is re-elected in November 2024?
Okay, should we go ahead question-wise or we collect few more? I think I can go question-wise. That will be better.
That will be better, yeah.
Right. When it comes to the Gaza war, the implications are already being felt. The wave of diplomatic recognition that Israel has enjoyed for some time will be stopped for a moment. But that is not to say that the Arab countries would not want to establish ties with Israel. I think if you compare the 1973 October War and the fallout of the October War and the fallout of this particular conflict, there are vast difference. That also spoke a volume about the prevailing situation back then and right now. If you look at in the current scenario, no Arab countries, particularly UAE, Bahrain, they have not snapped diplomatic ties with Israel. They are watching the developments very carefully. They have scaled down the diplomatic communications, of course, the trading activities and the movement of people from one country to another country, which was on the rise, now has been scaled down, and that's very obvious. They would not want to see a big. Why I'm saying this is because the kind of political normalization between Israel and the Arab countries, were mostly done on some convergence of strategic interests, and also these are the policies being wielded by the ruling elites. So the sentiments of the public are still very much with the Palestinians also, but that is not throughout the region. If you look at the conflict, when the conflict started, some of the protests were mostly in Syria, Iraq, to an extent Turkey, Lebanon, but not in the Gulf states. That also to me speaks a volume about the kind of acceptance or the tacit understanding between Israel and the countries. when it comes to the Palestinian question, this question has come back on the fore again. This was carpeted for a very long period of time. Now, the only challenge would be the leadership. How much Netanyahu is interested in resolving this conflict, or is he hell bent on finishing Hamas, according to him? But the Palestinian leadership is also very corrupted. That one needs to understand that. The closest time the Israelis and the Palestinians reached a very durable deal was in 1993 with the Oslo Peace Accord. But after that, no serious activities have taken up. Even if you look at the current scenario, I would say there are not much constructive talks going on, except for the ceasefire. That one of the foremost objectives is to come back to a ceasefire, so that some sort of a peace prevails in the region. But it remains to be seen. I will not be able to make any prognosis in this regard, but the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not going anywhere. Even regardless of the attempts being made by, say, newer players like, or middle powers like China, there are 4 or 5 major points which the Israelis and the Palestinians will have a hard time agreeing upon. That is, the issue of Jerusalem, the water sharing mechanism, the return of the refugees, particularly the border demarcation. So these are some of the very pertinent topic which need to be resolved, but that will take some more years. And moreover, the lack of leadership is going to keep the issue running. Bala, can you unmute yourself? You're muted.
Thank you. Next is, I have a question, Dr. Alvite. The scale and pace of change in Saudi Arabia is phenomenal, and Vision 2030 has become a key driver in this. In your view, how do you think this will shape the geopolitics in this region and beyond?
See, the Vision 2030 is a very, I would say, very ambitious project of the young Crown Prince. That is to, we can see no matter how much they are close to the UAE, the Emiratis, both of them are also in competition with one another. But if you compare the status of UAE, particularly cities like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, they are very, very advanced technologically also. But the Saudis were a little late in that regard. But it's the realization of the young Crown Prince to have an alternative to the hydrocarbon-based revenue sources. And at the same time, they have come to the realization that unless and until they moderate some of the stance the country stands for in terms of, say, entertainment, the ease of doing business inside the country, the rules and regulations pertaining to the female, gender. He has come to the realization that it's high time that we bring some reforms inside the country. That's the reason why he has started with the NEOM project around the Red Sea region. But then, of course, the amount has been scaled down. It was earlier 500 billion, but the reports that came out in the public sources about a couple of months ago indicates that the government has slashed down some of the amounts being allocated for. It's a very ambitious project. One of the success of this project is, would rely on the acceptance of his reform programs by the youth population. It's very important that because the youths in Saudi Arabia are also comparing themselves with their peers in different parts of the region, how they see their friends and age groups are enjoying in other parts of the world, particularly in the immediate UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, which is a little more moderate. That's the reason why reforms after reforms have been announced by the Crown Prince, allowing women to drive, opening up the tourist visa to female tourists and others, segregation of male and female in the stadiums, have been relaxed. The theaters have started. F1 has come in there. Now they are vying for FIFA World Cup. So these are some of the things which the youth would also want to enjoy within the country by not going out of the country also. So it remains to be seen because they have only about 6 years to fulfill his wish. That is the 2030 Vision 2030. And if it doesn't, if it's unable to achieve some of these objectives, it remains to be seen what would be the reactions of. But so far, and moreover, the media in Saudi Arabia is tightly controlled. So we don't get to read various news about certain resentments of, there are still resentments inside the country, regardless of what we are seeing and hearing about female driving on the streets. There are still news coming from time to time about arrests being made, about some dissenting voices inside the country. But it's a very ambitious and a promising project. That's also the reason why they are calling for more investments from various parts of the world, not only in India, not only from East Asian countries or Asian countries, but also from various parts of the world. So that is something, which the Crown Prince really, really looks forward to achieving in the times to come.
Next question is on UAE. UAE is already a known global leader in technology, fintech, and digital assets, and Saudi Arabia is now following a similar path like UAE. Do you see technology to be an integral catalyst for change in this region? How can India leverage this shift?
Right. That's an interesting question. I think partly it's been answered in my previous answer. Technology is one. As much as India promotes technology of transfer or transfer of technology (TOT), uh, this technical cooperation has become a very strong component of these countries, particularly the GCC countries, apart from Israel, that is very, very advanced in its own technology. That's also precisely the reason why they would want to warm up to the Israelis. If you look at one of the reasons why UAE and Bahrainis, even Saudi Arabia would want to normalize relationship with Israel is because of this technological cooperation. Apart from the Iranian factor, apart from the economic factor, we in India are also looking forward towards enhancing that sort of a partnership. We are doing mostly with UAE at the moment. We are doing with Saudi Arabia, including in defense sector also. There are a few companies in UAE that already has started to discuss the possibility of engaging into cybersecurity technology pertaining to cybersecurity, climate security, apart from defense sector. And we are doing equally with Israel. So in the times to come, as we are also promoting the use of technology and technology in our foreign policy pursuit, they are doing the same thing. So there is a strong convergence of interest in this regard.
There's a question from Mr. Pratap Heblikar. He has asked, please elaborate on the role of non-traditional security related subjects in India's foreign policy calculations with respect to West Asia.
All right. Again, that's a very important, pertinent topic, particularly when it comes to the threats of climate change. That is one of the reasons why uh, we have discussed with almost all the countries to enhance the level of our interactions in the field of climate technology. And particularly the renewable energy, this country, as much as we are facing the brunt of the global warming and the climate change, we would want to lessen the dependencies on the fossil fuel and go to climate friendly energy sources. UAE has come forward in that regard with India, and we have Israel also. There are already trilateral partnership between UAE, India, and Israel in this regard when it comes to the climate technology and renewable energy, particularly. Saudi Arabia already has initiated something called Green Initiative. I think it was in 2020 or 2021 they have launched this project in order to work towards mitigating the threats of the climate change and the global warming. They are doing it for the region, they are doing it for the country, and they are also looking for partnerships with various countries. Another area which we can see more and more interactions in the times to come is the health sector. We have seen the rats of the COVID-19 from 2020, early 2020, and even till today. Uh, uh, that is one potential area of cooperation. The MOUs have been, there are many MOUs. The only thing is that we have not worked on those MOUs for various years. Be it in, particularly in the health sector, we have signed many MOUs. I have done a small piece for Diplomat in 2020, talking about the potential cooperation between India and the Middle Eastern partners in this sector. Another area is the cybersecurity, sir. Again, UAE has come forward in this sector. Our CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team of India, has a very thriving partnership and cooperation with some of the major countries in the region: Israel, Oman, even North African countries like Tunisia, Egypt. So that is one area. Cybersecurity cooperation. We have a very with Al Azhar University in Egypt. Then we have a Hedaya Center in UAE that looks into radicalization, counter-radicalization. These are some of the pertinent non-traditional security regions. And of course, we also have food security, which we already have that corridor agreement between India, UAE, and Israel. We call it the Middle East Food Corridor. But then it has again slowed down because of the conflict. But these are some very potential and a very promising agreements that these countries have signed to look into some of these pressing issues with regard to non-traditional security areas. So you have climate, you have food, you have renewable energy and health for now. And space, again, military application plus civilian application. The Chinese are also are entering into the region massively, as much as we are also looking for more partnerships, particularly with apart from Israel, with UAE and Saudi Arabia.
There's a question from Dr. K.C. Beliapa. He has asked, how do you envision the resurgence of Daesh, Vilayat, Khorasan, who have been given a clear diktat by their present Caliph Abu al-Qurayshi, as this will have serious potential ramifications for India?
All right. See, Bala, we already have seen the ramifications 2014 onwards, even in India also. Till about 2017-18, when the territorial possessions were recaptured back by the security forces, when their financial resources were curtailed and destroyed by the constant coalition air campaigns and other ground assaults. But to me, the ideological underpinnings would be very important. They were very successful during their heyday, during their active days. They were very successful in exposing to the world that how vulnerable you are wherever you are. It doesn't have to be a very carefully crafted or planned attack, but the concept of lone wolf, and also the utilization of some of the day-to-day, items like small knife, your vehicles, ramming into the cities in crowded places. So these are some of the practices which have been espoused by the ISIS. Like, this is not to say that not any other military terrorist organizations had not done earlier, but the way how they carried forward, making use of modern day communication and technology mechanisms, literatures, they have been able to capture a wide attention from various like-minded people or people who kind of adhere to that sort of a very pernicious ideology. That to me would be a concern. But then if you look at the activities of their activities in the region, from time to time they have managed to carry out attacks, but not as severe as it used to be between 2014 and particularly 17 and early 18. But the remnants and how they would try to inflict damage in the public space and the domain is something that I should be concerned of, including in India also. Particularly targeting very sophisticated venues like malls, theaters, discotheques, pubs. That is also a kind of a mushrooming culture in our country. So this can all be very vulnerable to such hardened elements towing the lines of the ISIS.
Due to the paucity of time, we are taking two last questions. Both are from Mr. Rajpal Budania. One is he has asked the Iran Plan 2015 enthused India. Can this plan be revived if Kamala Harris comes to power? One. The second question he has asked is you said India is essentially bilaterally engaging with the West Asia. How do you see the minilateral initiatives like I2U2 and the IMEC in the context of India's geopolitical interest?
Right. I'll take the last one. I have done a presentation for the Asia Economic Dialogue with the MEA in Pune early this year. Uh, that would be that could be included. That India has been a part of. India has initiated IMAC, and India also has agreed to join the I2U2. That was mostly, conceptualized. These initiatives were conceptualized, looking at the manner in which the geopolitical realignments were taking place. Of course, I2U2, the Americans have played a very important role, knowing that India is increasing its profile in the region, and they would want to see India as one of the, the power brokers or the major powers operating in the region, and also led to build up more regional coordination and cooperation, thinking that that would lead to further countries joining these initiatives. But the other way around, they have completely, or all of us have completely ignored something which I mentioned, the problem, the fomenting problem, that is the long-standing unresolved Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But if you look at the I2U2 in particular, there are very strong intents coming from UAE. Even early this year, they have held a couple of very important discussions with the Indian government about taking forward this collaborative efforts. It has not been completely shelved, so it is very much there. The only thing is that the involvement of Israel will be slowed down for now. At least in the open domain, these Arab countries would not want to show to the public that they are openly interacting with the Israelis when the conflict is going on, or the unresolved Israeli-Palestinian issue is again back on the table. With regard to IMAC, again, it's a very interesting. It's only 1 month after, not even a month. It's only after 2 weeks the IMAC was announced that the conflict started, and that again. But if you have seen the speech given by the Greek Prime Minister during the Raisina dialogue, they were very looking forward to materialize this the corridor. Now, what happens is many of these countries are, expected to work internally for the moment right now, because it's all about the connectivity corridor, like from Maharashtra, Gujarat, all the way to UAE, and going up to Saudi Arabia, from Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Jordan to Israel, Haifa, and all the way up to the European coast. So for now, the focus would be mostly within these countries to work on their on upgrading the existing infrastructure, or to prop up a new infrastructure, something which we are also planning in one of the coastal areas in Maharashtra. There are about 5 ports Indian government has identified to be a part of this project. But it is a very promising project, but the progress will be slowed down for the moment, because there are other countries which are not very much happy because of their exclusion. Iraq, Turkey, which are again some of the very important countries in the region, that they have not been. But the longer idea, but the idea behind the policymakers was that, like, once this comes to the fruition, many other countries can also be incorporated. But all thanks to the Hamas attack on 7 October, that this project has been completely, taken off, not sidelined, but it's been given some sort of a less importance at the moment. But the countries are expected to work internally for themselves. With regard to Iran, it's again, that's something which everybody is looking forward to. Whether any change in if Donald Trump's come back to power, it's going to be a lot more difficult, particularly for the Iranians. They might come to some sort of a negotiations, but a plan like JCPOA of July 2015, which the Americans and the Israelis, particularly Netanyahu and Donald Trump, thought are giving much leverage to the Iranians to build a bomb. That sort of a plan will not be on the table. The Americans were talking to the Iranians in the last year also. The Iranian position also has to be understood. They are also having a major economic problem within the country. There are lots of resentments in the public. It's also one of the objectives of the new president to paper over differences with the Western countries also, while promoting ties with countries like India or China, or for that matter, any other Asian countries. But the US election, the result of the US election will have a major bearing on the Iranian politics also, particularly in terms of the regional geopolitics. Whether they will be able to, because the Europeans are not doing either constructive role in this regard. The EU3, they tried a bit, but they did not see the light of day. But we will have to see. Even for that matter, Joe Biden administration couldn't do much during this 5-year term. But given the situation right now, there's already a very heightened sense of, see, when it comes to West Asia, we don't look at only the bilateral relations. We also keep into consideration many other regional actors and the regional dynamics. So that is something which we also have to bear in mind. The evolving nature of Israel's relationship with Russia, or China, or for that matter with Israel. They themselves do not have a very good relationship with the Americans right now. So I would not be able to give a very satisfying answer in this regard, given the sensitivity of the issue at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Alvite, for patiently taking all our questions. Before I move to the vote of thanks, let me just make this piece of information available, because we find a lot of young research scholars here. At Center for National Security Studies, we have just opened slots for the internship. Whomsoever they are interested, they can apply. I have pasted my coordinates in the chat box. They may find it there. They can apply to this email ID with their credential, with their CV, and we can take it ahead from there. And as we come to the conclusion of today's webinar, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Alvite for sharing his expertise and perspectives. Your extensive experience and deep knowledge have provided us with invaluable insights into the complexities of the region and the considerations for India. A special word of thanks and gratitude goes to Mr. Pratap Heblika, Member, Governing Council, CNSS, for his inputs and introduction that have been instrumental in bringing this webinar to fruition and ensuring its success. I would also like to express our gratitude to all the participants for their engagement and thoughtful questions. May I also take this opportunity to thank Major General J.V. Prasad, Director, CNSS, for his steadfast and unrelenting support. I also appreciate my colleagues at CNSS for ensuring the smooth execution of this event.